Star Wars Squadrons is a first-person space combat game released by Motive Studio in 2020, and my word does Squadrons do a great job of it. From the breathtaking space scenes, to attention to detail, to gameplay and the score, it's all well done. To start with, the game looks absolutely stellar. Everything looks and feels authentically Star Wars, and there's the impression that resources have not been wasted here. Outside of space locations, environments are static and unchanging, which is more than suitable for the needs of the story, but it means focus has been put where it deserves to be in a game like this, in the ships. For each of the ships available in the game, there is an outstanding level of detail on offer, whether that's inspecting the ship, exploring the cockpit between missions, or in a glancing flyby during combat. The whole game is in first person, so that level of detail in the cockpit just oozes authenticity and atmosphere as you play. The level of immersion from flying into combat with the controls in front of you, enemy fighter in your sights and the frame of the cockpit or wings slightly obscuring your view, just transports you directly into the world. You truly feel like you're in that TIE fighter or X-Wing. Top it all off with Gordy Haab, a frequent composer of notable Star Wars video games, producing a soundtrack that's just on point, effortlessly capturing the essence of the original, beloved John Williams score. So let's now take a deeper look at the two halves of this game, starting with the single player. In Squadrons' single player campaign, you step into the Star Wars universe post-Endor as two nameless recruits within an elite fighter squadron for both the Empire and the New Republic. As a member of Titan and Vanguard squadrons respectively, you take a central role in the conflict as the Empire attempts to destroy the New Republic's secret Project Starhawk. Before each mission, you have the opportunity to engage in conversation with other members of your squadron both prior to and following the briefing you will receive for that mission. The small number of characters surrounding each squadron means that it each feels fairly unique, and these conversations served only to showcase each character's personality, background and relationships, but also served to provide hints of info about the further state of the Star Wars universe during this period. Some of these conversational moments aren't optional, but they were so engaging as small, down-to-earth moments between the bombastic battles of each mission that I actually looked forward to new opportunities to talk to everyone. These moments really breathe life into the game's story, where it could have been easily focused on providing a bare-bones story to get you into combat. The story that you embark on with these characters is generally pretty great. I didn't have particularly high expectations going in, and those expectations were easily surpassed. While there are usual slightly over-the-top and dramatic moments you would expect from any Star Wars story, it captured the essence of Star Wars that I think most people, myself included, are looking for. That balance between the big, bombastic, cool and exciting sci-fi moments and a relatively grounded story that grows and expands the universe. And that balance is what lets Squadrons pull off plenty of quintessential Star Wars moments throughout its campaign.
Get moving, 5! Hey, the bed is closing! Go, go, go!
This, for me, is where the multimedia expanded universe approach to Star Wars really shines. In-universe, the completion of this new project is a big moment for the New Republic. It's potentially game-changing, it's big. But it's also a development that can easily be a background piece. The story is entertaining and exciting and worth experiencing, but it's not required reading if you are only interested in the core Star Wars media. The missions themselves are evenly split between the Empire's Titan Squadron and New Republic's Vanguard, but despite this mission split, it felt like there was a clear focus on the Empire. To me, this was Titan Squadron's story. While it's generally always more fun to play as the bad guys, and frankly Star Wars could use more stories, particularly games, from the Empire's perspective, this feeling mostly came down to the Empire side of the story feeling a bit more interesting and featuring more interesting characters. Being the bad guys opens up a wider range of scenarios and avenues of story to tell for the characters, and while there wasn't any character I particularly disliked on either side, the characters of Titan Squadron just had more going for them. There was more at play in their relations to each other and in how they interacted with what was going on and naturally that led to them being more engaging. The only real downside to the campaign is its length. It clocked in at around 9 hours or so, and I think that probably could have been a little bit longer. With the gameplay and structure of the game being one that doesn't really allow for smaller, slower moments, it was all action all the time, and in the end things quickly escalated through to the finale and I was left wanting more. But if wanting more is the biggest issue I experienced with the campaign, then that's a pretty good issue to have. Multiplayer. Squadrons multiplayer lets you face off against other squadrons in either 3v3 or 5v5 dogfights or 5v5 fleet battles. Fleet battles are intended to be the bread and butter core experience of the multiplayer, offering intense battles that ebb and flow as you attempt to destroy the opposing team's capital ships, fulfilling the same Star Wars fantasy that the single player pulls off with the added unpredictability of playing against other skilled players rather than the blaster fodder of the story campaign. Dogfights are solely available as unranked, while fleet battles are available as the main ranked mode of the game and an unranked mode versus AI bots that can be played either solo or co-op with other players. Multiplayer also features 2 exclusive ships, the TIE Defender for the Imperials and the B-Wing for the New Republic. Both of these ships are more advanced that are intended for pilots to show off their skills and abilities. As is standard in most games, in order to reach ranked play, you need to have reached a certain level, which is a forgiving level 5 in Squadrons. I've personally never found a forced grind to a higher level just to unlock ranked play that enjoyable. From my experience playing, and from a few visits to the Star Wars Squadrons subreddit and Discord, is that the multiplayer is in a phase of its life cycle that no longer naturally encourages new players. That is to say, it is well and truly dead.
I wish to complain about this parrot what I purchased not half an hour ago from this very boutique.
Oh yes, the Norwegian blue. What's wrong with it?
I'll tell you what's wrong with it. It's dead, that's what's wrong with it.
Yes, unfortunately PvP in this game is dead.
It's passed on!
And I mean actually dead.
This parrot is no more!
Not dead in the sense that many people on social media like to claim a game is, where you can still get matches but it takes longer, or they just don't like the game. No. The PvP here is dead.
It has ceased to be!
So, if you do chance upon a game, or put the effort into joining the community to find games, what is the PvP like? Well, if you get into a match, it's likely going to be through joining a custom game held by the community. These are filled with high level and extremely skilled pilots who have mostly stuck around for the community. I get the impression that it is a community that is welcoming to new pilots, but it means additional obstacles are in place for anyone wanting to try out the multiplayer. Obstacles that I think are well past the point of sustainability for the multiplayer of the game. The community's attempts to pull together at regular times in an attempt to populate queues for new players certainly is commendable. It's clear that there's a dedicated core of players who love the game, regularly play custom games within clans, and want to keep it alive and entice new players. But I never really got the chance to try it out that much. From what I can tell, the meta of the PvP, particularly in fleet battles, has seemed to settle on one with little focus on actual PvP, as the focus has instead shifted onto quick kills against the AI bots that fill out games, before somewhat coordinated strikes against objectives allow you to quickly take down the opponent's capital ships. There seems to be a focus on tanky builds and speed exploits to make players even more difficult to kill, thus further reinforcing the focus on killing AI. Ultimately, this means that new players are funneled into grinding to level 5 as soon as possible, perhaps under the impression, like I was at first, that I would need to join ranked matches to find where the players are, only for the queues to time out with an error after 10 minutes of being unable to find any players, and then having to rely on there being available custom games, or rely on playing at times when the community is gathered, to then not really get the experience you'd expect. Whenever I checked out custom games, there was always a couple of private games and maybe 1 or 2 public games available with 1 or 2 players, but I was never able to get on at a time when the community was playing due to my own schedule and to the schedule of the community. That being said, I did grind up to level 5 through solo fleet battles, which is probably the next best alternative if you do want to get more out of the game. The solo fleet battles were fine, if a tad boring. The AI was pretty inconsistent and would flip-flop between being absolutely dominating and getting absolutely wrecked. This means the games don't drag on, which is good, but it also meant that it simultaneously felt as though the game played itself and my input made little difference, and that everything was on me to make any kind of difference to the match. The friendly AI seem to ignore pings on objectives, meaning you can't even simulate a somewhat coordinated strike, and I often found that if I made the effort to try and fly back to my capital ship to quickly swap a ship, or load out to better suit the phase of the game, that phase would be over in a flash, usually because the enemy AI absolutely trashed friendly bots, or that I would have zero support from AI when playing objectives. Any victory I had in the solo battles really felt like I'd personally earned the victory despite the best efforts of the game, which I would usually say is a pretty good way to experience a game solo versus bots, but that usually stems from a degree of power when playing against bots, the power fantasy of it all, but in this instance it just didn't feel particularly fun. On the one hand, I do love that the focus of PvP is on playing the objective, but because of the way the meta has seemed to evolve, you can get the same experience grinding through unranked matches against AI. But overall, the very limited multiplayer experience that is available now in Squadrons is one that, when it has a pulse, is toothless and stale. As of 2025, Star Wars Squadrons is a game of two very distinct halves that offer wildly different experiences. The single player campaign is a genuinely solid experience. It's a short, simple story driven by great characters that gets right into the action. Not only does it give a narrative that in my opinion is superbly driven by the Empire, but it also delivers on its promise of an exceptional Star Wars experience that really makes you feel like you are in the seat of the ships you are flying. The multiplayer, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. The multiplayer component to a game like this is a core part of the experience, and in the state it's currently in, 4 years after release, there's absolutely no way I can recommend anyone pick up the game with the intention of enjoying the multiplayer side of the game. The community is dedicated, but so small that consistently finding games is a chore, and unless you have some friends you want to play against, really not worth the effort. And the solo mode versus bots, from my experience, grew quickly stale. For a final recommendation, we're going to weight slightly in favour of the single player experience. You should definitely play this if you're after a short but well done single player Star Wars experience. The single player by itself, I'd give it a strong 9 as a recommendation. The multiplayer component is a big part of the game, and with such a short single player campaign, it's clear that the multiplayer experience was intended to be the real meat of the game's experience. But given that it's currently dead,
Now that's what I call a dead parrot.
I just can't recommend it. I'm going to give the multiplayer a 3 because you do at least have the option of bots and custom games within the community. Overall, that gives us a final score of 6 and an overall rating of taste dependent, depending on course of your preference for single or multiplayer. A fair score considering what we've discussed. So with that, thanks for watching. You can support the channel by either liking or commenting on the video, subscribing or joining our Discord, where you can join other players in the community and maybe get enough players together for a match in Squadrons. Until next time, happy gaming.